Good evening, everybody. What's going on? I am going to get started with another video that's going to really segue from my last video on the XRP laddering strategy. Meant to get this out a couple days ago, but life gets in the way. So let me get started and see how we're going to leap from the end of that other video. If you have not seen the XRP laddering video, I would recommend it, but I will give a basic recap here so nobody's lost as we're going through this. So, outline for this one, this was the single digit bull run that I mentioned before, waiting for XRP to go to 55, 65, 85, 555, whatever it may be. I said, let's get some realistic numbers that we can take advantage of as active traders rather than the passive trading method, which is buy, hold, lottery ticket to the moon. Here we go, cash out. And now we've traded very valuable assets digitally anyway for fiat, which is not very valuable, at least won't be in the long run. So I'm going to go over that before and after portfolio like I did before. I'm going to show what an expanded post-apocalyptic bull run portfolio would look like, and particularly just give you some ideas of thinking what to do with digital assets. If you see quite a few of them, at least in a fiat dollar amount in your portfolio, and you have that twitch, that nerve that I got to cash out now before it crashes back down. That's a very real phenomenon. That's not abnormal, but it is more on the emotional investing side. Let's get more on the logical investing side. And then I'd like to start thinking not in fiat, but let's start thinking in ounces of gold. I will do separate precious metals videos. This is kind of a primer and a beginning for that. So that's what I'm going to go over at the end when we look at our portfolio at the end. So from the last video, I think I mentioned and showed everybody what a budget from John and JQ Public looked like. If you have an income and a job bringing in $4,000 a month, you got a bunch of expenses, and then if you're lucky, you have $300 left over at the end. But you did sink a couple $100 into XRP, ended up with 1,000 of those at the current 50-ish cents that it's trading at now. And then that video on XRP laddering showed you what you can do with just 25% of that of your digital assets rolling over and compounding into the next play, otherwise known as laddering. Save the 75% for some other time. And this was the before and after. When we did the single digit bull run, it was $8, $5, $3, and $2 for pretty much the big four: XRP, XLM, XDC, and HBAR. And when we looked at before and after, some of those, at least at the end with HBAR, we were able to shave off probably about 2.2 million into a municipal bond fund that was able to pay you 4,662 a month, income tax free. That's why the right side of this portfolio, if you got rid of debt, that should be focus number one, because you don't want to carry that month to month. But you also got rid of your tax liability by investing in a municipal bond fund. The yield isn't very high, between 1.75% and maybe 3.5% at its top. Stable. It's designed to generate passive tax-free income. And I will do a separate video on not just municipal bond funds, but normal mutual funds as well, and the range of available options that you can look at to get steady income coming in when you put money into these assets. And then you look at the leftover on the right side, over $2,000 compared to the 300 you had before. On the left side is basically your paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. The right side is I'm now getting into a different ball game where I've built a portfolio from compounding my assets, and I'm getting residual passive income tax-free from a municipal bond fund, because I'm using the money that I do make to actually work for me. Now, who knows with hyperinflation if 4,600 a month is even going to be a worthwhile endeavor 9 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, I don't know. But with the expanded portfolio theme of this video, I'm going to show you what to do and what you can think about doing. If you see on the bottom right there, that 6.7 million in HBAR, and you just don't want it sitting there because it could crash back down to, maybe 30 cents a token, 40 cents a token, whatever the case may be. And you're thinking in terms of, oh, I missed the window to cash out of that 6.7 million. Let's start thinking of what to do with a portion of that 6.7 million, not just put it in our bank and let it deteriorate fiat wise, because that's what's going to happen anyway. So the crash I mentioned was back to its previous all-time highs. So what you're looking at when I'm going to flip back and forth a little bit is, when resistance and support levels in some of these assets that are very volatile just to begin with by their very nature happened. It's feasible. We could go back right down to where the previous all-time highs were, still doing better on the right side than you are the left side. That was the purpose and really the theme of that last video. But when you go back and you see, all right, I've got, I'm looking pretty good at my 8532 where it's run, and then I don't want it to drop down to, $3.30 for XRP and then pennies for everything else. Again, still better than the other side, but let's take maximum peak and let's just argue for the purpose of this video and illustrative purposes that we are actually at the peak here, 8532. If you really think HBAR is going to stay at $2 and not go any farther than that, I get it. I think HBAR is one of those that I believe in. It's actually my second largest holding, but I'm going to use HBAR as an example and focus on HBAR in this expanded portfolio and to show you kind of what to do to generate some passive income. So let's think in looking at just HBAR itself as an asset. We're going to look into property. We're going to look into commercial real estate, and then we're also going to look into residential real estate. Since HBAR is your largest holding, the 3.3 million coins on their portfolio, at $2, if you really want to cash out on this, it's got $6.7 million in fiat value. What could you put it in? Gold and silver are never a bad option. Again, this isn't financial advice on what you should do. It's only a video to theoretically show you what you could do. Bitcoin, I don't see that going down anytime soon. And if it does, it'll just come back up because at the next halving, there will be that much closer to peak amount of Bitcoin that can be mined. And like gold and silver, not exactly something that can be inflated. At least that will. But let's look at HBAR because you have 3.3 million of them at $2 per coin, a $6.7 million portfolio. If that goes up to $4, now you're talking 13 million. If it goes up to $6, now you're talking 20 million. So if you believe $2 is the max for HBAR during this bull run, let's shave and liquidate some of them off to the tune of almost $1 million. Let's say 950,000 HBAR at $2. We're able to cash in on some of that. That'll give you about 1.9 million in fiat. Let's look at residential property and then let's look at commercial property. Residential property, let's look at a quadplex, which is a residential piece of property with 4 individual units. Let's say roughly $400,000 that you would pay for that. And these prices I'm going to go for I want to temper expectations on this. Think of mid-market size cities in the South and not these major metropolitan areas like Atlanta, like Houston, or like Miami. Well, Miami's Florida. Florida's real estate market is insane right now. I don't even know when that's going to taper off. But let's just say, Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, Texas. Those are major, 1.5 million residents or more in each of those cities. These are not those prices. Think medium market size cities with a small little interstate beltway around them. Think of Athens, Georgia. Think of Raleigh, North Carolina, or maybe even Winston-Salem or Greensboro. Think of smaller cities like that. Or think of Charleston, South Carolina. A little more expensive to live in Charleston, South Carolina, but that's kind of in that mid-market. Not a big city, but not exactly a small town. Prices. And then on the commercial side, think of storage facility. And I look at storage facility as a business opportunity on a commercial side because it doesn't have the headaches of buying and investing in a restaurant. It doesn't have the headaches of investing in a franchisee like some yogurt place where you have to deal with those, the corporate fee, the fees you have to pay and all the headaches that go along with that. But a storage facility is you own the property that you buy it outright. You have a bunch of individual units, and when people put their shit in the units, you just collect a check every month. I think that is probably, comparatively speaking, one of the least headaches when it concerns buying businesses. Manufacturing plants, you got to monitor ridiculous facilities upkeep and maintenance, and you got to buy raw materials to turn it into shit to sell. Again, storage facility is a pretty good um, indication of passive income on a business sense. Collect a check every month from your individual units that are filled. And then as you're managing the business, if you're going to invest in $1.5 million in buying this business and the property, obviously you're going to set up that business and run that business to generate revenue on the back end. And I'll give you some illustrations on that. So liquidate some of the HBAR. Think of assets that you're going to put it in, not just what you're going to spend the 6.7 million on or the 1.9 million on, but think of what you can put it in to generate revenue. And here's what that is going to look like on the next slide. So post-bolt run portfolio. This is back to where we were before. You had your job, $4,000 a month. You had $300 left over. Nobody likes that lifestyle. That is paycheck to paycheck, working for somebody else. But let's say you've already generated the revenue from the municipal bond. Now with the quadplex, 4 different units, residential units that you can rent out, but rent out only 3 of them and live in one of them. And even if you just charge $800 a month for the other 3 units, now you're generating revenue from that quadplex of $2,400 a month. Yeah, there will be things that will come out of that $2,400 that you'll have to pay and upkeep and all those things. But just thinking of it from a standpoint of how do I generate revenue and then limit some of my expenses, I'm going through this. And then with a storage facility, there's a range of what kind of revenue that can net and clear you on a monthly basis. For a $1.5 million piece of property in a smaller market city, even on the outskirts of it, anywhere from $6,500 to probably $9,800. So let's just take somewhere in the middle. Let's just do $8,750 a month that it's bringing in on revenue. Now that with a storage facility, there's a lot of things to consider, which is, you have to keep a certain amount of those units filled at capacity. So let's say, if 85% is your goal and your aim for your management team, and it falls below that to 80 or 75 or 70, then there's some problems because that's going to affect how much revenue you bring in. Or instead of just having a general manager and paying them a salary to run it, structure some equity into their wages or into their even ability to manage it. You can contract them out and say, look, if you get 80% of these units filled, here's what you're looking at from a bonus standpoint. If you get 85, here's a higher bonus. If you get 90% of them filled, here's a higher bonus. And give them some ownership in it so you don't have to be married to the place watching this thing, working the desk, trying to make the phone calls, trying to do the marketing to get these units filled. Leverage your time out to somebody else by using an equity structure in there. Maybe that $8,750 a month could turn to $10,000 a month. You never know. So here's what the rest of your budget looks like. You're not paying any rent now because you live in a quadplex and you are living in one of the actual units. You're just renting out the other 3. So rent is gone as an expense. Debt, I would always recommend liquidating whatever assets you have to get rid of all the debt if you had that, so you're not carrying that on a monthly. And then let's just say you decided to quadruple your household lifestyle and better food and groceries you're bringing in, better things for the children to do, maybe some more sports or activities, extracurricular that you can afford and use that as part of your household income. Who knows? Maybe you want to do a paint job, add a coffee and wine bar in there. Who knows? Well, it's your quadplex. You live in one of the units. Do whatever you want with it at that point. But you can actually increase your lifestyle by doing it this way and not depending on, obviously, the income from a job every month. I even doubled the auto and gas budget because with the free time that you're ditch the job with this stuff coming in, your job now is to be a landlord or landlady for your quadplex and to be the business owner managing a storage facility. So that is your job. That's what you're going to work your 40 hours a week for. But you don't have to work the 40 hours a week because you own the system that brings in this revenue. You have the muni bond, the quadplex, and the storage all coming in. So double your gas money and take vacations now. You can use more gas for taking road trips down to the beach, down to the mountains, to a lake house, whatever you want to do. You're going to be paying more in insurance and you're going to be paying more in taxes because you now you're not just depending on revenue from a muni bond. You have revenue from your business and also revenue from your landlord activities. So taxes and insurance are going to go up to cover those things. And I even did like a 10x on the entertainment budget from 200 to 2,000 a month because why not? Look how much revenue you're bringing in. If you want to go, rent those large lake houses for 1,400 for a week with the family, go ahead and do it. Budget the entertainment. Just don't say, hey, look, all this money coming in, I'm just going to blow it on strippers and cocaine. Look at this from a standpoint of, okay, I'm bringing in more money, but I have to be a little more diligent with how I'm budgeting it. And after all of that, the getting rid of the debt, getting rid of the rent, paying a little more in taxes, obviously, and then increasing your lifestyle, you still have over $8,000 a month left over from this type of approach to your revenue stream. Not bad. That on that leftover, that's going to go into some other things when, you own a quadplex, and there's plumbing issues, you got to be the one to pay to fix it. When there's, if you own a revenue in a storage place that has, air conditioned, is that one of the perks of people putting their storage in with you is that you have air conditioned facilities and the HVAC breaks down. God knows what that's going to cost. And then anybody knows who's been involved in HVAC invoices that they would have to pay versus commercial versus residential. They are quite stark. And we're talking into the 4 and 5 figures for commercial property. Ask any convenience store owner what their HVAC bill costs and their refrigeration bill costs when their walk-in freezers go down, their reach-in freezers go down, and coolers go down, and they have to get the HVAC guy to come out and fix it. Stupidly once every 5 months, it seems. Realize that leftover, again, not strippers and cocaine time, but it is stuff that you can also put into other assets that you can keep investing in, or suck away some kind of rainy day fund when those things do come up, because they will come up. Emergency funds, I'll do a video on that to show you my philosophy and how to set up one of those that will be pretty much ironclad, that you don't have to put any money into once you've actually established it. And, what does your HBAR and rest of your portfolio look like after you've done all that? Well, the one thing I want you to start thinking of is in fiat, because you see those fiat dollars and you kind of get antsy and you want to sell and you want to sock it somewhere so you have it. Nothing wrong with doing that on a little bit. The dollar is going down, but it's also kind of the least dirty shirt in the laundry. So when the fiat system does crash, the dollar might be a little bit stronger than the rest of them, but precipitously will go down in droves, almost like falling off a cliff when you think about it. So you shaved off some of your HBAR to get some of that extra revenue from your properties. $2 a price, even if it drops down to its previous all-time high in the 40 cents range, you've done something with it to generate it. But I always think of, look at the total dollar value, the 4.8 million, and start thinking of this in ounces of gold and not dollars, because what you're seeing here is theoretically, that kind of HBAR, even at just $2 a price, 2,000 ounces of gold will buy you a pretty good grip of it. XDC is your second largest holding. Even at $3, you're looking at 1.5 million. What's interesting about XDC and the ounces of gold that you're looking at, about 625, look at the bottom at the storage facility that you now own, at netted at 1.5 million, maybe in property value or business value. Roughly 600 something ounces of gold will get you a commercial property in a mid-sized town. Think of it that way. That about 166 ounces of gold will get you commercial real estate that can generate revenue for you. Think of it in these terms, because as we're shifting to this, I wouldn't say put all of your digital assets into hard gold, but what you're looking to is preserve your wealth. And then gold at 2,400 an ounce, we could be seeing 3,000 an ounce very shortly. It could go to 4,000 and 5,000 an ounce. Some people have predicted 10 to 20,000 an ounce. If that's the case, the dollar has been destroyed without a doubt, and no doubt in my mind. I'm going to do a gold video to show you how to think further in this, but stop thinking in the fiat is my suggestion, and start thinking in the ounces of gold as a means of what kind of wealth you have that's going to be preserved and even grown from that point on. Your best bet in my case, in a lot of these, is holding on to most of these digital assets, because I don't think 8532 is where they're going to be staying. And if it takes the next bull run for that to happen, let's say after the next halving in 2028, who cares? Look at the portfolio you've built. Keep adding to it between now and 2028, and then you'll really see something take off once the infrastructure is not only built, but is then being utilized. So summary, as you're looking at your expanded portfolio bull run, I always say focus on the assets and collecting them, the digital metals, property, and not the fiat. The fiat's just a gauge we've been using and been conditioned to use for so long because we put so much trust in it. And it's really just backed by the federal government forcing legal tender note laws on the rest of its citizenry and obviously the rest of the world since it is the reserve currency. Once that no longer happens and people lose faith in it, the fiat is going to be worth less at 8 in the morning or less at 5 in the afternoon than it was at 8 in the morning. And it's going to be going down in value hour by hour, even minute by minute. And when you're thinking of what do we do with this, I have to pull the trigger on that 6.7 million in HBAR. Think in terms of generating monthly revenue. If you want to take that fiat and use it, what are you going to do to generate the revenue as you saw in that example that I just showed in this video? And then, like I said, when you see 4.8 million in your portfolio, think first, not thing first, typo, think first, what does that look like in ounces of gold? Try to shift. It's a tough shift. Gold and silver don't provide revenue. Just think of it in that way, but they do store wealth to preserve it, and they'll also grow it for you in the upcoming disaster that's about to happen. So with that, I just wanted to end that video, do a part 2 on that, just as a segue after part 1. I started thinking just in different ways of how we're going to manage some of these assets that we're working on. But if you can free yourself up from the paycheck system, if you can think in terms of buying property, if you can think in terms of monthly revenue, you'll set yourself up very nicely for what we're about to go into in the long run. So full faith and confidence, everybody. Giant hugs.